new strength. Have you ever been to the point where you wanted to tap out? Have you ever been at a point in your life where you just said, I'm tired, I'm through, to hell with it all? But something or somebody came along and refreshed you. What are some things that you could do to get refreshed? You do know sometimes some much needed rest is refreshing. You've been ripping and running, going here and there, family pulling on you, you carrying the bulk of the burden of getting business handled, taking care of this, taking care of that. People run you raggedy like you don't get tired. Come on, you can't say hey, man. Say hey, man. The reality is every now and then you get tired too, and you need to be refreshed. In the morning, a hot shower to bring you alive can be refreshing. In the evening, after being in this Texas heat, a cool shower can be refreshing. Some of us work like Hebrew slaves, and sometimes a good vacation, or as you millennials say, vacation, or po people say staycation. Either way, sometimes it can be refreshing. On a hot day in this Texas heat, y'all know it get hot in Texas. It gets so hot the devil drinks Slurpees. And so sometimes a cool, refreshing beverage of your choice can be refreshing. Sometime on a hot day, I don't want to know when I see that Brown and Chris cup. I'm just assuming it's iced tea. It's iced tea. I didn't say if it was Long Island or not. I just say it's iced tea. It's iced tea. Iced tea. Iced tea. But a cool drink on a hot day can be rather refreshing. When you talk about getting refreshed, you're talking about being rejuvenated, renewed, or restored. And many of us, if truth be told, life gets the best of us. And be honest, you need to be refreshed. We realize we need to be refreshed, but we want to be thankful for those who refresh us. Here we are in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, and as we are at the end of 1 Corinthians chapter 16, again, we're looking at verses 15 through 18. Paul, as he wrote the church at Corinth, I'll bring you up to speed. Stay right here. When you look at it, Paul, when you break down 1 Corinthians, Paul has waded through some weighty matters in Corinth. You look at, he had to deal with disunity in the church, disrespect for authority, sexual immorality, arrogance, unruly worship, leading fellow believers to sin against a conscious idolatry. Paul dealt with some weighty matters in this letter to Corinth. Shunning fellow believers at the Lord's Supper. They arguing over who got more bread than me. They got a bigger sip of the grape juice than me. He dealt with some serious matters. Heretical teaching. And when you just wink at chapter 15, he had to argue what the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ mean. Paul is dealing with some weighty matter, but now at the conclusion of this letter of 1 Corinthians, now he's reminding us that there are some people who came to my aid. There are some people who looked out for me. And he says, I want you to acknowledge such men. I want to tell you today as we look at our text that many times a bunch of us have come to church wore out. Come on, be honest. Ain't nobody here but us. Many of us had to press our way to church even when we didn't feel like it. Come on, help me be honest in here today. So some of us, we didn't feel as good as we want to feel, and we almost said, I'm going to skip this Sunday. Come on, be honest in here. that pain in your body, and it was pain, and you said, I'm hurting, I'm going to sit it out today. But something in you said, no, you need to go on. And isn't it amazing how because you press your way, your spirit end up being lifted, that load got lighter, all because you got your way. It wasn't because you just came to church, but when you got to church, somebody refreshed your spirit. Today, we want to be thankful for those. Before I go another further, can y'all just take a minute and put your hands together for Chris and Nima, for they're guilty of refreshing our spirits. Today, Paul, I thought it was ironic that before Paul closed his letter out, he purposely pinpointed a particular point that makes sure that people who refresh you acknowledge them. Why? Because they don't have to do it. People don't have to be nice. And then when they do be nice, they don't have to be nice to you. The text says, as we're going to read today, acknowledge such men. When you look at verse 15, Paul says, I urge you, brethren, you know the household of Stephanas, that it is the first fruits of Achaia, and that they devoted themselves to the ministry of the saints. Watch it. Paul said there are some people among you who, now he talks about the household of Stephanas, and the reason that's important is because they were some of the first converts there in Corinth, and they were helping Paul do ministry. You do know one person can't do it all. I know folk want you to think that they the booger with the sugar, but one person can't do it all. You might be the star quarterback, but if you don't have nobody blocking, you can't do it all. You need somebody to throw it to, somebody to take the ball out your hand and run it. You can't do it all. And then while you showing out on the field, somebody got to make the Gatorade. You can't do it all. And all I'm saying is sometimes coming to church and knowing the air is on a hot day is good, but sometimes you need your spirit refreshed. You've had a hell of a week on your job. You had a hell of a week in your house. You had a hell of a week dealing with your kid. You had a hell of a week dealing with pain in your body. And every now and then you need some refreshment. Number one, the reason why we want to be thankful for those who refresh us. Number one, let's look at the reason for refreshment. Everybody say reason. Reason. Wrong station. I'm sorry. Wrong station. But look, number one, at the reason for refreshment. Here, ironically, as we look at 1 Corinthians, Paul writes the church at Corinth, and I just told you he's been laboring, he's been ministering, he even got new converts that helping him get the word out. And if you pour out, you're going to get weary. You don't have to be spiritual. You don't have to have gone to seminary. You don't have to, as Sister Carr would say, have matriculated into the halls of academia. If you just keep living, you know you're going to get tired. Your car, if you don't put no gas in it, it's going to run out. Or you have an electric car. I know y'all balling. But watch this. If you don't charge that bad boy, you're going to be sitting side the road. And Paul, he has been guilty of pouring himself out. He's been guilty of ministering to the saints. And every now and then when you pour out, somebody got to pour into you. Would you be honest? Have you worked with people, or have it been somebody in your family? Have it been some? Well, don't just look straight ahead and don't look around. But would you be honest? There are times folk got on your last nerve and your patience was short, and you said if they say one more thing, I'm gonna snatch a patch of hair out of their hair. You in church? You might well tell the truth. I just said it a little more cuter than what you said. You said I'm gonna bust they beep, 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 beep. I just tried to fix it up a little bit. I tried to say it a little cute because we in church. But there are times when you pour out, your fuse is short. Your patience is short. You at your wits' ends because you done gave everything to everybody. But who gonna come to your rescue? Would you agree? I'm gonna copy off Tamika paper. Tamika say life be lifing sometime. And would you agree life be lifing sometime? You know, life will make you tired. Life will make you weary. Life will drain you. Life can be exhausting. Life will make you pooped. Life will cause you to be fatigued. Life will get you weary. Or as Sister Mays will say, life will just have you spent. And the reality is, when you're depleted, you need refreshment. So watch it. You can either be depleted of nourishment, or you could be deficient in necessities. Either way, you need to be refreshed. Would you be honest? There are times we've already established that you come to church and you just say, I'm going to be going, so they won't say nothing. Or I'm just going because sitting in the bed ain't going to help. And when you come in, thank God, there are those here to help refresh you. Sometimes them songs of Zion lift your spirit, and you forget about the cares of this world. You forget about the bills you got to pay, and you enjoy the singing. You enjoy the music. Why? Because it refreshes you. If you ain't never needed refreshing, keep living. I used to laugh when I heard our senior saints say, baby, keep living. And we used to mimic them sitting in the back of church. How so-and-so do it? Baby, keep living. We used to mimic them, and now that life be life and you understand what they talking about. Number one, look at the reason for refreshment. If Paul had been guilty of pouring himself out. The house of Stephanus were guilty of pouring themselves out. And if truth be told, there are times that you do stuff people don't even know you doing. Deliver me from people. Terry got a partner that every time he wants you to see him do something before he do it, he'll hold the paper right here and let you look at him, then he'll go throw it in the trash. He don't just pick it up and throw it in the trash. He gonna hold it right here, and he'll stand right here till you look over at him. You could be looking at him in your peripheral. That don't count. He needs you to turn his head, and when you see him, then he'll go throw it away. But what about the people who work around the clock that you don't see them do what they doing? You do stuff people don't never know about, and you ain't trying to get no credit. But if truth be told, as much as you do, as much as you help, even you get tired. Number one, look at the reason for refreshment, because we're going to learn that these men came and refreshed them, but it's a reason they came, because when you pour out, you need something or somebody to pour into you. Said a word about the reason for refreshment. But when you read it, he says, they devoted themselves to the ministry of the saint, that you also submit to such, and to everyone who works and labors with her. Paul says, I realize I'm not the only one doing ministry. And if truth be told, the pastor ain't the only one doing ministry. It's a lot of time. If somebody's crying by you and you slip them some napkins or some tissue, that's ministry. If somebody is disheartened and hurt and you just put your arm around them, sometimes you ain't got to say a word. Just know that you there to comfort them. That's refreshing. When everybody seems to be against you and somebody come along to hug you and love you and encourage you, sometimes just a hug will go a long way, because that refreshes you. Paul said, there are others who labor with us. It ain't just us, but watch it. Verse 17 says, I'm glad about the coming of Stephanus, Fortunatus, and Achaeus. For what was lacking on your part, they supplied. Watch it. What was lacking on your part. Now, this is not a term of disrespect. Paul is not saying y'all couldn't do it, so I had to. No. Paul realized that there are times when you can only do what you can do. Unfortunately, I'm short, and every now and then Deacon Liz will stand by me and reach over me to get something, and I have to look up at him because I'm short. And, there are times, well, since you up there, grab that for me, because I can only reach so far. Sometimes you need somebody bigger than you, taller than you, got more money than you. Sometimes you need other than you than to do it. So, number one, we said a word about the reason for refreshment. But number two, let's look at the rendering of refreshment. Let's look at the rendering of refreshment. Why is that important? Because people can see you thirsty and not offer you nothing to drink. Come on, tell the truth. What really hurts me is sometimes it be your family. They blow your phone up when they need you, but when you call them, they won't even give a crippled crab a crutch. Text says, Paul said, I'm glad about the coming of Stephen. I'm excited. I'm happy. Why? Because watch what he said. For what was lacking on your part, they supply. Why is that important? Because sometimes we come in depleted, we come in defeated, we come in down and out, and you can't pour out when you ran out. Ooh. You can't pour out when you ran out. And there are times you really want to be of help, but you just ain't got it. Y'all ever did that to the bill, man? They call you threatening you, and you like, look, man, I ain't got it. Now, I can put 25, 27, 50 on it. I can put 38, 19 on it. Look here. Now, you keep hollering at me, you don't get nothing. Y'all ain't telling the truth. But watch it. When you ain't got it, but watch the text. The text said, where you lacked, they provided. And there are times when you just didn't have it, but the music ministry refreshed you. There are times you came in with your head bowed down because you're trying to see how you're going to make ends meet, how you're going to pay this bill, where this money coming from, how you going to get this handled. But it's something about when they played these songs, when they sang the right song, it refreshed you. The reason why you ought to get happy at the rendering of refreshment is because they either have to be given something to refresh you or have to be gifted with something to refresh you. And some of us, we can't play. We can't play the organ. We can't play the drum. We can't carry a tune. But thanks be unto God, where we lacked, they provided. Again, thank God for the rendering of refreshment, because it wouldn't do you no good to have what people need and not provide. Matter of fact, y'all help me preach. Just look at your neighbor and say, don't be stingy. Tell them, no, don't say it like you scared. Say it. Tell them. Dr. Miller told me, say, don't be stingy. God blesses us not just to be blessed, but to be blessings to others. And the reason some of us don't get no more than what we got is because we too mean, honoring, and stingy to bless people with what we got. But if you bless others, God will bless you. Today, thankful for those who refresh us. What would you be if you had not have gotten refreshment? Just the other day, you saw the news, a mail carrier dropped dead in a young lady's yard in the heat of the day. I'd be willing to submit he needed some refreshment. Just the other day, a police officer got off work and dropped dead in the yard in the heat of the day because they needed some refreshment. Whether you're in the heat of the day, whether you're in the heat of battle, life be life in, and every now and then you give the best of your service, but you can only give what you got, and when you run out, you normally give out or tap out. But the text said, thanks be unto God for those who came and refreshed us. It's right here in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verses 15 through 18. Paul said, he said, now the part that y'all couldn't do, he said, for what you lack, they supply. And again, please don't miss that. I want you to note the grammar of the text. He wasn't being disrespectful. If you ain't got it, you ain't got it. Deacon Smith, if I ask you for $1 million, you don't care how much I dance and jump and cry and do the split. Well, if I do the split, that's a separate something. But you don't care how I jump and die. If you ain't got it, you just ain't got it. And many times people come to church and they've given everything they had to get to church. Work got on their nerve. Kids got on their nerve. Household got on their nerve. Having bills and no money gets on your nerve. And listen, ain't nothing funny when you ain't got no money. What you around here laughing for and this light bill do? Quit playing with me and I ain't ate today. Life be life, and when you've given everything you've got, you run out. The text says, I'm grateful. Here it is, 1 Corinthians 16, verse 17. I'm glad about the coming of Stephanus, Fortunatus, and Achaicus, for what was lacking on your part, they supplied. And I'm grateful to God when I didn't have it. God sent people in our midst that could supply what we would needed when we was lacking the most. Sometimes you don't know an encouraging word, the right song. You don't understand how music plays a part in the church. And Lord, deliver us from people who don't want to look out for the music ministry. I don't care how good the pastor can preach, and yes, the word of God is a vital necessity, but even with some meat, if you put some bread with it, it's on. I can live without the bread because I'm watching my weight, but I ain't gonna lie. If you got some French baguettes, you know, if you have, as my friend Shalonda back there, if you have some pumpernickel, I'll take that. You never know, but watch it. We got to appreciate and celebrate those who God sends to refresh. Paul says, I'm glad that about the coming of Stephanus. Why? Because we saw the reason for refreshment. When you pour out, you need somebody to pour into you. Then we saw the rendering of refreshment, because just because somebody got it don't mean they're going to give it to you. Think about that. Just because Sister Mitchell look as good as she look, just because I sit by her every Sunday don't mean she's going to give me one of them suits. Y'all ain't tell the truth. I ride with Ken and he put that knot out of his pocket and count all them 100. Don't mean he gonna give me none. Sometimes we take for granted because other people got it, they gonna give it to you. They don't have to give you nothing. They don't owe you nothing. But watch it. They were only able to give because either they were given some resources or gifted with resources. Either way, it was what they had. But they were kind enough to share. Lord have mercy. They were kind. Do you know how many people that have voices, that have talent but no anointing, and they just give you what they want to give you and be through, versus somebody who pour their all out on the altar to bless the house, and even though they're broken, they share with you. You don't know the days preachers get up hurt but still sing. You don't know the way minister of music are broken dealing with family issues and life issues, but they put their issues aside to be a blessing to you and me. So the text said that we need to acknowledge such men. Said a word about the reason for refreshment and the rendering of refreshment. But then this here sure enough ought to get you. When you get to verse 18, 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 18, the reason why Paul was happy about Stephanus, Fortunatus, and Achaicus, because verse 18 said, for they refreshed my spirit and yours. Oh, that got me right there. Because some folk are only do good while the preacher looking. So some folk are only look out for the pastor, but you standing right next to the pastor and they won't give you nothing. But the text said, they refreshed my spirit and yours. And I don't want to speak for nobody, but I'll be honest and say there are times I just didn't have it. There are times I wanted to give up, but Neiman and Chris, they went to work and it refreshed my spirit. Now, you got to be honest for yourself, but is there anybody can be honest enough to say that they have refreshed your spirit? There are times you might not have told them thank you, but the right song they played at the right time, and it brought tears to your eye, but it lifted your spirit. They did the right thing. You never know what people are going through. That's why y'all heard me say, if you come to church, you ought to have some church. Ain't nobody got time. Don't nobody want to get up here and hear you saying, well, I'm here. Well, whatever they want me to. Well, what we saying now? Okay. No, if you up here, you got to give the best of your service, and it refreshes other people. And I know what you're saying. If I pour into them, who gonna look out for me? I'm glad you asked. The Bible reminds us you reap what you sow. If you be a blessing unto God, God will bless you. Said a word about the reason for refreshment and the rendering of refreshment. But number 3, let's look at the recipients of this refreshment. I shouldn't be the only one singing Chris and Neiman's praise. I shouldn't be the only one saying how well they've done, because they just don't play and sing to me. Chris and Neiman don't play and sing just for me. There are others in the house. There are others in the crowd that, if truth be told, that right song lowered your blood pressure. Because you came in hot as fish grease, and you had already said after church you were going to make that phone call, and you was going to pull up, and you were going to see what they were talking about. You had already said that your boss ran you hot Friday, but Monday you got something for him. You had already said, but it's something about they played the right song. They ministered to you, and watch it. That ministering, that refreshment to you lowered your blood pressure. You got your thoughts together. You said, well, no, I bet not do that, because if I choke fire them, I'm going to jail. So it's amazing how, because they do their job and refresh us, we can run on a little while longer. We take stuff for granted. That's why I teach this church, stop saying thank you and show it. So anybody can be flip, I thank you. I try not to look up on purpose. When people are kind to you, when people bless you in ways you can't imagine, you ought to show your thanks. Because if they played a song that helped you deal with grief, if they played a song that keep you from having a nervous breakdown, if they ministered to you when you were going through hell on your job, be honest, it shouldn't be enough just to say thank you. You ought to show your thanks. We appreciate Chris. We appreciate Neiman for the work that they do, but it ain't enough for us to say thank. And don't get me wrong, because even we're good at patting them on the back. And Pat is good, but can I be honest? Pat ain't paid 9 bills. Y'all ain't telling the truth in here. Pat is good, but Pat ain't bought now a tank of gas. Pat is good, but Pat ain't sent their clothes to the cleaner. Come on here. Pat is good, but Pat ain't putting no food in their belly. Lord know they got to eat because they come in here lightheaded and pass out on the drums or the organ. What you gonna do? Try to talk about refreshment. It's imperative that you celebrate, you recognize those who refresh. Paul, out of all of this letter here in 1 Corinthians, he dealt with it. We just talked about it. He dealt with disrespect, disunity. He dealt with lawsuits. He dealt with divorce. He dealt with a young man want to sleep with his stepmama. He dealt with sexual promiscuity. He dealt with a bunch of stuff in Corinth. He could have left it at that. But notice as he prepares to close out 1 Corinthians, he pauses long enough, or he puts it in the lofty language of my friend Damian Duncan. He puts pen to parchment and poetically pens this purpose with perfume in our persuasion. That, watch it, that when you find people who refresh you, acknowledge. Listen, as hot as it been, you do know what a cool drink of water do on a hot day. As hot as it been, what a cool drink. Now, we grew up, we had to play outside. We had to drink out the water hose. But, you know, when you like Deacon Mays, they only drink Evian. You know, regular water won't do. But when you think about a cool drink of water on a hot day, I don't care what you say, that's refreshing. When you think about you don't work 642 hours without a day off, just a day of rest can be refreshing. I just told you a staycation, a vacation, a vacation, whatever you want to call it, sometimes getting away is refreshing. And truth be told, many of us, when we burn the candle on both ends, if you don't stop long enough to be refreshed, you're going to run out. That's why you ought to want to get to church. That's why you ought to want to just not come, sit, and look, but you ought to take in, soak up everything going on, because that is what refreshes us. This morning, we're talking about thankful for those who refresh us. Here it is, 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 15 through 18. Paul says, I urge you, brethren. I implore you, I beseech you, I strongly beg you. When you see such men, after they blessed you, because after all, when you go back to verse 15, he says, you know the household of Stephanas. Notice what he said. Maybe I'm going too fast. He didn't say just Stephanas. Read it, make sure I ain't cheating. He said, notice the household of Stephanas. Everybody in the house is being a blessing. Watch it. That they have devoted themselves to the ministry of the saints. Everybody in Stephanas' house was trying to help somebody. You see it? He said in verse 16 that you also submit to such and to everyone who works and labors with us. Paul realizes that although he founded the church at Corinth, he had some help in the church of Corinth. Why do you point that out? And I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm going to tell you the truth. Sometimes that we as pastors can be so pastor focused. If you ain't buying me a new Cadillac, if you ain't buying me $46,000 worth of rings, if you're not buying me a private jet, if it ain't about me, you ain't doing ministry. They just showed a young man on social media not too long ago. He went platinum on his church because they went buy him a Movado watch. I told y'all how much it costs. I gave y'all a whole year and y'all still ain't got a watch. I started to tell him, called him and asked him, how much is the watch? That you done took a whole Sunday morning, that they filming your service, and all we heard is you going off about a watch? All the stuff that happens in your church, all the people who work alongside you, and all you can think about is you. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than me. And if everybody play their role, you do know you can be the star quarterback, but if you don't have no center, how you going to get the ball? You can be the star quarterback, but if you don't have nobody blocking for you, how you going to get the playoffs successfully? Speaking of football season, as you can tell, at the end of this month, we're getting ready for preseason. Glory to be to God. Training camp coming, hallelujah. But watch it. Notice that sometimes when running backs receive rushing titles, they buy everybody on the line a gift. Because they realized they wouldn't have been able to do it if it had not been for the help they had. Can I be honest? As much as I try to study and as much as I try to do it, do you not realize that if it wasn't some time for the music ministry, setting the atmosphere, serving, do you not know it breaks up fallow ground and make it palatable for you to hear a word from the Lord? That's why today we got to be thankful for those who refresh us. We already said a word about the reason for refreshment. Said a word about those who are rendering refreshment. But then you got to look at the recipient of refreshment. Paul is talking about him and the church at Corinth. In other words, Paul purposely says, it just ought not be me acknowledging them, but everybody who done benefited. All right, y'all deep. Come here. You know, 4th of July, you done went out there and smoked meat and cooked and this, that, and the other, and you had 1,642 people come over your house and eat, but how many left the dishes where they were? How many took some food to go and didn't even say, you need me to help you wipe a dish? Not even wash. Do you need me to just wipe one off? They didn't even say, you need me to help you put anything up. They came, eat, got their belly full, ate their to-stay plate, and ran off with their to-go Tupperware. And they didn't even offer their help. But they benefited. They benefited from everything you did. Even if they didn't mean it, they could have said, you need me to help you with anything? Matter of fact, they could have just kept walking. Do you need me to help you with anything? On the way out the door. Any little bit would have helped. But many of us have been, as Executive Pastor Moore says, the benefactors. We've been the beneficiaries. We've been the beneficent of the refreshment that Neiman and Chris provide us. And the text says we got to acknowledge such men. Y'all don't remember this because, you know, y'all don't remember. But when we used to have vacation Bible school or 3 o'clock program, do you remember them little cookies and that punch? After church? Boy, y'all ain't telling the truth. I don't care what you say. You looked forward. Oh, we put them cookies on our pinky finger. We walking around. Y'all ain't even telling the truth. Well, we walking around trying to see how many we could get. We couldn't get too many because we done ate most of the cookies, but the ones we had left, that had red punch all over. We drank in the fire. And don't let it be a church that call themselves sophisticated and have chicken salad and those club crackers along. We was high on the cotton. And as much as we enjoyed church, it was after church that we wanted some refresh. Y'all ain't telling the truth. Oh, the choir sung, oh, Reverend preach, but make sure they save me some. Come on, keep it real in here. You look forward to that. Many reasons. That's the only reason some of us went. Who in the kitchen this week? Well, you know Sister Carr and Sister Burden and Sister. Oh, yeah. Make sure they save me some. Huh? And you just waiting patiently the church over because you already know when you get back there, it's on and popping. We got to be thankful for those who refresh. Because we've already agreed, life be lifing. I don't care how much you love Jesus, folk gonna get on your nerve. I don't care how much you love God, they gonna try you on your job. I don't care how many books of the Bible you memorize, sometimes it's gonna be some hell in your house. I don't care how much you love Jesus and pay your tithe every now and then, life gonna wreck your situation. And when life happens, when there is deficiency in your life, when there's depletion in your life, you need to be refreshed. So lastly, today we're thankful for those who refresh us. I thank God for Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, because after all the stuff he dealt with, lawsuits, sexual immorality, divorce, false teaching, out of all the stuff Paul dealt with, he remembers and counted important enough to say, oh, by the way, there are some people who refreshed us. Listen what he say. Acknowledge such men. Why did he, after you done dealt with all those weighty matters, why you just didn't say, all right then, y'all take care the next time? But before he left, he wanted to make sure that he put this right here. Verse 15 told you the household of Stephanus have devoted themselves to the ministry of the saints. He talks about, and then there are some of you who labor along with us. Paul says that Stephanus, Fortunatus, and Achaia, they didn't just refresh me. Y'all did see it in verse 18. He said, for they refresh my spirit and yearn. Yearn. It ain't just me. They refresh you too. The reason why you ought to bless people when it's their time, because what goes around comes around. But I got to be honest, nothing from nothing leaves nothing. And all of us know somebody who don't never want to put nothing in, but want to get some out. Friday nights you were parched and you worked all week, and it just so happened to be payday Friday, and you were real parched, you was extra thirsty, and you passed Kroger, Fiesta, Aldi, Walmart, Sam's, Costco. You passed all them because you was a little thirsty. It's been one rough week, and they didn't have it. You was a little thirsty. You had to journey across the bridge. 8 people in the car with you, and you ride, and when you pull up to your destination, you say, you purposely put the car in park, you move a little slow, you take your seatbelt off slow on purpose because you're trying to see who finna get in on it. You say, all right now, y'all. Finna go in here and get me some ginger ale. Finna go in here and get me some. Don't nobody move, don't nobody blink, don't nobody say nothing. You say, all right, you go in there and you buy the beverage of your choice to wet your whistle. You get in the car, and depending on where you go, they'll give you a cup of ice. Talking about refreshment. Refreshment. You get in the car, crack that bag, pop that top. Now, folk didn't have a word to say before you went in. Y'all ain't telling the truth in here. They blink, they play like they looking out the window. They reaching like they lost something. But when you get back in the car, cups come out everywhere. They didn't even get out the car. Where they come from? The irony of they wouldn't, notice I didn't say they couldn't. They wouldn't put nothing in, but they sure want to get something out. And if you don't know nobody like that, I bet you better not look in the mirror. Because all of us know somebody that never puts in, but always wants something out. You said, let's go out to eat, they ready. Long as they paying. Y'all ain't telling the truth today. I'm trying to talk about thankful for those who refresh us. Because there are times that we didn't give our best in service. There are times we just didn't have it to give our best in service. But the Lord sent refreshment our way to lift our spirit. Where we left with that heavy burden being lifted, we left with a little pepper in our stepper. We left with some hope because God used them to refresh us. Said a word about the reason for refreshment. Said a word about the rendering of refreshment. Said a word about the recipients of refreshment. Lastly, this is my ride home. Look at the B clause of verse 18. A clause says, for they refresh my spirit and yearn. But look at the B clause. Therefore, acknowledge such men. Since they did something for you that they didn't have to do. That's why church ought to be noisy. Because if you think about it, God does stuff for us he don't have to. I should have had some help right there. God been good to us when we wasn't good to him. You ought to acknowledge him. When you know some of us have robbed God, we ain't prayed all week, and sometimes you were so hungry, you was hungry than a refugee hostage, you didn't even park long enough to bless your food, and that very food could have been your last meal. You could have got poison, you could have got salmonella, but watch it, even when you didn't do your part for God, God does his part for you. You ought to acknowledge. You ain't sitting here looking good as you look because you've always had it together. Israel said, if it had not been for the Lord who was on my side. Have I got some honest people in here to say, if it had not been for the Lord who was on my side, I'd have went crazy. I'd have had a nervous breakdown. We'd have been divorced. I'd have gave it all up. Israel could say if it had not been for the Lord. The star members can say that too, but we can also say if it had not been for Chris and Neiman, who was on our side. Where would you be if they didn't sing that song when your loved one was in the hospital? Where would you be if they didn't play the right song when your job was laying off? Lastly, look at the recognition of those who refresh us. Lastly, look at the recognition of those who refresh us. Paul says, acknowledge such men. You said it like this, give honor to whom honor is due. The sad reality is all of us like recognition. When I first got to the store and we would have food at the church, people want you to acknowledge what they brought. They know I bought them paper plates. Everybody know eating on my paper plates. They didn't even say nothing. Paper plates? So I had to go down the list. Thank God for so-and-so bought paper plates. Thank God for so-and-so who brought some napkins. Thank God for so-and-so who brought some forks. And then some of their name I couldn't call because they didn't bring nothing but an appetite. But people like to be recognized. On your job, you done went perfect attendance, and if they don't say nothing, you hot as fish grease. Come on, tell the truth. You made the coffee and they drunk it all up and they didn't even, they know I made that coffee. You put all the ink pens in the jar and everybody come get a pen because they know where the pens be at and they don't even acknowledge. Y'all, I thought y'all were going to be honest today. All of us like recognition, A honor roll, B honor roll, perfect attendance. And ain't just these kids like recognition. It's some grown folk in here like recognition. But you can't look forward to somebody recognizing you when you too mean and honorary to recognize somebody. John Thompson of Georgetown University used to coach college basketball many years ago. John Thompson, he instituted something with his players. During practice, they would run drills, and when somebody would give you the assist and you make the layup, he taught his players that while the crowd is cheering for you, point to the one who gave you the ball. John Thompson of Georgetown University, he implemented that in his player. They started doing it in college and it picked up in the pros, that when you cross the lane and somebody kick you an assist and you make the shot while the crowd is cheering for you, when you run back up the court, you point to the one who gave you the ball. So in other words, while they cheering for you, you point to the one who made it possible. All I'm saying is every Sunday when you leave with your spirit lifted, you certainly thank God. But while the crowd is cheering and thanking God, every now and then you ought to point to the one who helped lift your spirit. Every now and then you ought to point to the one and say, thank you for playing that song. Thank you for singing those songs, because those songs kept me when I was about to lose my mind. The text says, acknowledge, recognize, appreciate such men. Don't just say thank you, show thank you. It's hot outside, just like you hot, they get hot. Just like you get thirsty, they get thirsty. Just like you go across the bridge, I slip. But every now and then, whatever you like, they like too. You get hungry, they get hungry. We ought to show our thank. The text says recognize such men. Today, as we have musician appreciation Sunday, we're not doing it for shape, form, or fashion. We're not doing it to show the world this is what we're doing. We could care less what people think. Our job is to honor the people who labor and serve to bless and refresh us. We might not be able to give them $1 million, but the least we can do is show our thanks. You read it. You read it right there in verse 18. He said, therefore acknowledge. New King James Version say, therefore acknowledge such men. Now, you might not be on program and you might not be able to say nothing, but you can point to them. Everybody point to them right now. At least just say thank you. Might can't buy him a Bentley coupe. I might can't buy him, but at least I can do is be guilty of acknowledging such men. Many years ago, Gerda Wiseman was one of the 1,000 of prisoners held in the Germany's Nazi prison camp after World War II. She tells of a story that while they were in that dirty, musty prison camp, she said they noticed in a corner that some kind of way, because there was a crack in the foundation, that a beautiful flower grew amongst that hard cement. She tells a story that it was such a beautiful flower, such vibrant colors, that it stood out because that corner was dark. The walls were dark, the floors were dark, the corner was dark, but that beautiful flower some kind of way managed to grow through the crack. And even though it sat over there by itself, she said it's amazing how the women of the prison camp would carefully take care of that precious flower. Said it didn't mean much to everybody, but the ladies who were tired of looking at that dark corner, dark floor, dark wall, said they appreciated that beautiful flower that somehow managed to grow through the cracks of that hard concrete. Like Gerda today, some of us have been in dark corners. Some of us have been in dark places. Some of us have been dark places mentally where you battling depression and people don't even know. They see your smile, but they don't see your heart. They don't know that you at your breaking point. They don't know you at your point of giving in. But watch it. Gerda said, even though that this flower was in a dark corner, dark floor, dark walls, in a dark place, the vibrant colors brought life to all the women that they purposely took care of that little flower. They took turns making sure they put water. They did whatever they could to keep the vibrant flower alive. That's my ride home. Do you know that we could be in a dark place? Do you know many of us have gone through some dark situations? But thanks be unto God, God sent us some vibrant flowers. And if God sent us some vibrant flowers to grow in a dark place, like Greta, we need to do our best to take care of the flowers. Again, y'all don't mind, just help me tell them thank you. When I look at this, the Bible says, recognize such men. I'm glad today that because they thought enough of us to refresh us, the least we could do is recognize them. They thought enough of us to give the best of their service. The least we could do is show our thanks. They've been guilty of refreshing us with songs like Jesus promised he'll take care of us. They refreshed us with songs like God is doing something wonderful in me. Ooh, yeah. They refreshed us with songs like whatever the problem, he will see us through. Did you hear me? They refreshed us with songs like what a fellowship, what a joy divine, when you're leaning on the everlasting arms. They refreshed us with songs, yes sir, like whatever they're singing even this morning. Look at how they refreshed us by singing songs like you don't know my story. Did you hear me? Not the things I've been through. Ooh, Lord, they refreshed us with songs that lifted our spirit. And so the least we can do is tell them, thank you. Is there anybody gonna join me today and say thank you, Neiman, and thank you, Chris, for refreshing us. I don't care where you go. You can always tell them thank you. I got to leave you now, but as I take my seat, I want to be guilty of telling them thank you. If I was in Russia, I'd say spasiba. If I was in Ghana, I'd say megasi mapi. If I was Hebrew, I'd say toda rabba. If I was Greek, I'd say eucharisto. If I was Italian, I'd say grazia. If I was French, I'd say merci beaucoup. If I was German, I'd say danke schön. If I was Japanese, Guyanese, I'd say domo arigato. If I was Chinese, I'd say oh dear. If I was a Hispanic, I'd say muchas gracias. But since I have a voice, thank you. Did you hear me? Thank you for laboring every week. Thank you for giving us the best of your service. Thank you for giving your all when didn't nobody help you sing. If there anybody here can say thank you, Jesus, for sending us some musical help. Thank you, Jesus, for giving us a beautiful flower in a dark place. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all just take a minute and thank God for him. Just help me tell. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Amen. I don't know about you this morning, but I'm thankful for those who refresh us. This old world can get heavy sometimes. It can get hard. Getting up, having to go to work and take care of your family. You have to serve the Lord. Have to put up with folk that don't care about you, don't care about your Jesus. This world can get hard. And that's why we all need somebody to refresh us. And if this morning, if you need refreshing, let me invite you to a fountain that'll never run dry, to a well that you can always go to, that'll always be there when you need it. And if you drink from this well, he said you'll never thirst again. Amen. That well is Jesus Christ. Amen. And he wants to refresh you on this morning. And if you come in here and you thirsty, and I'm not talking about what they talking about out there, all the thirsting. I ain't talking about that. But if there's a dryness, if there's a parchness in your spirit that you need to be refreshed, let me invite you to Jesus Christ on this morning. He wants to refresh you.